Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we are back with the daily races in Gran Turismo 7 on PSVR2, and this time we're jumping into a Super Formula car. Now this was my first race online with Super Formula. I think the daily races are for last week. This is the one that was on, depending on when this goes live. This was on the Suzuka circuit, which I had a fair bit of practice on by the end of the week, but this was my first time practicing the race. So while I did the race a lot, and I managed to get higher finishes than I did in today's video, this one's full of a lot of learning lessons and moments that I can definitely improve on, like that in my qualifying lap. And this is the quali lap that you're seeing right now. But before we go analysing into what I thought went well with this and what I thought went well and badly with the race, I just want to put out there that only about 20% of you are subscribed to the channel, and if you do enjoy the content, just feel free to subscribe, because it is free and it helps me out a lot of reaching my goal of 10,000 subs by the end of the next few months. So, of course, no pressure if you don't want to. It's just a free option there. So, anyway, I found Suzuka to be quite a fun track once I'd learned it. I'd taken a lot of tips from other sim racers, essentially, on how to take a lot of the corners well, and that was further on in the week. This was just my first try at trying to figure out the track myself, seeing which corners I did well at, which I needed to improve on. One big learning point was that corner where, in my qualifying lap, and this was my fastest qualifying lap, the one you're seeing right now, I was either riding the curb or I was decelerating too much, because you don't need to let off really at all in the online races on this track. When you're in Super Formula, you can take that all the way through because of the downforce. And to be honest, I just kept not trusting the car that it would hold or it would take me through, which was very, very stupid in hindsight. And I did end up correcting it later in the race. But let's go on to the actual race highlights. So that final lap, I think, was, 141.876, which put me in 8th place, a little lower of a start than the last video that we did on the channel, which was, I believe, in Sardinia. But we're in Super Formula here, and anything can happen. And as we go for the warm-up, I'm feeling a lot better than I was at the last race that we did on the channel, because back then I was just fighting to keep my 7th. I was pretty confident that if I could weave my way through what would be the first couple of corners of absolute chaos, then we had quite a good chance of actually making up a few positions and taking the fight to some other races, which does end up happening, which I'm quite happy with. So let's get into the actual race start, shall we? Lining up on the grid here before the lights go out. Feeling a bit more nervous now, but absolutely send it here. Get an okay start, gaining on a couple of cars I had. I do have to mention my livery is the same as a lot of other cars on the grid. I did change that in a couple of races time, but for now it still is red. But things will get clearer as we go through the race. However, things aren't very clear right now, as cars are just colliding with each other all the way through the first sector. Luckily, due to the lobby rank or rating, I think we have ghosting on, which is more for when your car kind of goes sideways or you're about to have a horizontal collision, rather than smashing into someone's bumper, like what just happened then, when that driver in front lost his grip a bit there through one of the first corners. So coming up to the right-hander that I struggled with in quali a little bit, and unfortunately absolutely rear-end the driver in front due to him braking a little early and me braking a little late. Unfortunately, we just come together there. But another driver goes flying off the left. You can see I'm not happy because I have just picked up a penalty that I'll have to serve in a second, which is a bit off-putting, but I'm still trying to keep my head in the game and take a decent line through that left-hander, which I did struggle with. Again, a lot of corners I struggle with here in Suzuka over my first race, because I'm used to playing it maybe in the F1 video games on flat screen. This is my first time in this sort of situation online, racing it, and I was still definitely learning, especially through these two corners, the two left-handers, where I tended to lose grip on the second one, but that was actually okay coming through there. I don't lose too much time to the driver ahead or behind. And yeah, I have to serve my penalty there. Absolutely frustrating, as I basically come to almost a stop, what it felt like. But luckily, we only lose maybe like 1 or 2 positions because of the gap to the drivers behind. And they are weaving and weaving behind me, looking for that gap. But I absolutely create that gap for them by losing my composure completely there, which I am, again, just kicking myself. So at this point, I'm thinking, I'm not on for a very good race here. I'm not on for a very good result at all. But things do pan out a little better than I thought they would. And at the end of the day here, at this point in the race, I'm back to where I started. So I haven't really lost any positions in the grand scheme of things, but I could have had a much better start to the race than I did. But now it's just kind of about capitalizing on the rest of it as I see another car pulling up in the left-hand mirror as I'm trying to keep my line as clean as possible, carry as much speed as possible. And it is part of the learning process of me as a driver, really, of trying to just wait for that gap to open itself rather than to rush in. And luckily a gap does open itself there with one of the drivers, I think in 6th, just losing it through the straight. But unfortunately I get absolutely battered by the blue car behind, which is just absolutely gutting. Just as I thought I was getting some pace up, I was having some good lines, we are smashed back down to 10th. And there are only a couple drivers behind, because I think a couple have left since race start after getting some bad starts. So I'm almost at rock bottom here. Just completely out of my control. It was a mixture, it seemed, of connection and also me just taking a slightly more cautious line. It's not like I was really going slowly through that corner. He just decided, get me out of the way, I want to be in front. So it's now up to me over the course of the next 10 laps, which have been condensed into about 6 minutes for your viewing pleasure, to get somewhere, you know, I'm happy with position-wise. And as we come to the final chicane here, an opportunity does present itself as one of the drivers goes off track. I think there was a little collision there from the two as they were quite close into that corner. But I'm now up into P8 because I think somebody also pitted on that lap. Or left, possibly. It's kind of hard to keep track of as we go through, since these aren't like, say, Manufacturer's Cup or anything. These are just daily races. People do drop out and in, but I am up to P8 here, and P7 is looking like they're making a few mistakes coming into the corners, and they do overcook it here, almost, and I'm just looking for that mistake to be made, which eventually it does get made, but we have to wait until one more lap to go through, which is longer than I would really want. But as we come through exactly the same couple of corners as we just saw, but on the next lap he does take the same line, but this time he's not so lucky and actually goes onto the grass, and it gives me an opportunity to pass there, which I do very happily take. And you can see with that head nod, very happy that I made it that position, and he's made that mistake and given me that opportunity to come through. Now as we come through to the left-hander, I see another person in my sights. One thing about the Super Formula cars, as you just saw, was it kind of fades out when you put your head into the geometry of the car, which happens with every car in Gran Turismo 7. But because the Super Formula cars are so narrow, it does happen quite a lot when you're leaning into a corner. But that doesn't matter. I'm now smelling blood, seeing this person in front, hoping they can also make a mistake, because my pace is pretty decent. I am catching to them lap by lap, but it's not fast enough to the point where I would be able to make up any more positions after them after the race ends. But luckily, they make a mistake at exactly the same point as the driver did on the last lap, letting me pass through straight up to the long left-hander, as I also see some smoke in the distance. That driver behind actually had incredible pace throughout the race compared to me. At this point, I was kind of thinking, can I keep him behind me now that he's made that mistake? I had the opportunity, but it was just up to me keeping my composure and getting some good race pace and taking it through the corners. I hadn't pitted by this point, so I think some of the drivers who had pitted were on fresher tyres, but I don't think they were. They just had a lot more pace than me. And I didn't want to cause another incident at all. I didn't want to get a penalty. I didn't want to have either of us off track and die. I'd rather he pass me cleanly because he's got more pace and I can fight the people behind. So as we come into the two left-handers, he comes flying in here, given the space. We almost, if not for ghosting, would have touched there, but eventually does make the pass with no contact caused, which is very, very good. And as we fly through here, coming over to the last chicane after this left-hander, he just kind of goes away with it, and there's no chance in hell I'm going to catch him. So I'm just focusing on keeping my P5, and if I keep that, I'm going to be very happy. Better than my P7 last race. That's my goal, to keep on improving, and also much, much better than my P8 start for this race. But we're not paying this lap. Going to wait till the next one, I think. But as you can see with the position marker at the top of my UI, I did just go into 4th because somebody was in the pits, but they come out of the pits very, very shortly, and they're on much fresher tyres than I am, meaning they can absolutely power it around the circuit. You can see them just behind me there, gaining time, and I do make a mistake of going wide here in the left-hander. I always struggle with this one, even throughout some of my later races on this track, and they just take the opportunity down the inside, give me a little tap, and off they go on the much softer tyres, basically. Well, not softer tyres, but less degraded tyres, and I'm not happy with that. Should have pitted a lap earlier, and I do rectify this in later races, but this was my first one, so I just wanted to see how long I could go for on those first softs, which didn't really benefit me that much. But I am into P5 now. But I'm thinking, okay, I've got a pit. I'm going to be losing so much time. I might even spin out. And this guy does make a mistake here, which means I can pass through and come into the pits. And I believe he does at the same time as well. But we rack on some new softs. Don't refuel because we just don't need to. Overfueled for this race. All the cars are, so you're never going to run out of fuel. And I think it was around a 4.2 second stop, which you can't really control in the game at all. It's just set like that. And I come out into P7, hoping that I can make a few more positions up if anybody disconnects or needs to pit. More like needs to pit, but I think there is one DC which pushes me up a place. But we are coming flying through here now. And I'm on fresh tyres, feeling pretty good, and soon enough there is somebody in my sights ahead who I can kind of fight against a little bit. As we come into the chicane, I think they're on old tyres possibly, so they just don't really take the chicane that well. See, they're slipping a bit with their grip, but they go diving into the pits to get a new fresh set of softs. But we're coming on to lap 9 now, so that was a very late pit from them, but I thought, I guess they could hold it out for a while, but it did allow me to catch up on my fresh tyres, and then they had to pit. So I'm back up into P6 now. And for a while there basically is no traffic whatsoever. I'm just kind of taking the circuit on my own, kind of learning it more, which is good for me and my development as kind of like not a great driver at the moment. But I'm now into P5 because I think somebody either pitted or disconnected as I come down the pit straight. So we're back up to the position that I was in before. I think this is the highest position that I've been in the race possibly, or I may have gotten a P4 for a couple of seconds, but not for very long. But I'm very comfortable and happy here. But there is another opportunity to take one more position as we come through and see another Super Formula driver ahead, who I've managed to gain quite a lot of time on since pitting, because I think they're maybe on a lap older tyres or something like that. So it's up to me to not fumble the last chicane and the last left-hander coming up now, and just to kind of push at them. And I don't let off at all there, which is very, very good. I'd learned to not let off at all. Unfortunately, I don't do this chicane well at all, and completely, basically ride the curb, allowing them to take P4. So I could have gone P4 there, messed it up a bit, but I'm still happy with the fact that we went from P8 to P5, stuck it out through the race, through the contact, through the penalties, through the disaster. And I learned quite a lot in this race. I'm definitely a lot better than when I started, and I carried on all the learnings throughout this video over my next couple of races too, which is very, very good. But thank you for watching. Thank you to our patrons, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Zeke Moser, Ace Gamer, and Hippie Pickle. And thank you to our YouTube member, Jin007, a license to chill. If you're enjoying the Patreon or YouTube membership or the Discord, all the links are in the description below. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.